Hey guys, welcome back and Happy New Year. First video of 2022. Tim here, Gamiviti, doing an install video by request. 4Runner, you know, with the drilling and everything. So, fans of the video series know I'm no stranger to audio issues. So, I'm inside our powder coater actually. So, there's going to be a lot of sandblasting, a lot of air blasts, a lot of beeps from forklifts driving around. You're going to love it. But what we're going to do, we're going to install a rack on this 5th gen 4Runner. Earlier this week I installed a rack on a 4th gen 4Runner, so I'm going to be splicing in some footage to show you the differences of each. When we wrap up though, you'll know exactly what it takes to install a rack on any 4th or 5th gen 4Runner. So stay tuned, it's going to be a good time. So as always, step one is removing that factory rack. This one's a little different. It's got these kind of funky rails, but we're going to use the big Torx wrench drivers to get those out of there. That's what we're doing here, but as you can see, 5th gen runner ends right here before the sunroof, so we're going to be adding that forward tower here in a second. Okay, so we got the factory rack off. Our next step is got to pull these little guys out, and then we got to pull these little rubber strips out. So off the front here, this one in the middle, that goes, and then that little guy in the back. So all the rubber goes, and then we'll just clean this channel up. But save these front pieces, the rubber here, because what we'll do when we're done is we'll trim those and we can put these back on. You can see there's just a piece of double-sided like sticky tape holding it on, and then a little clip, so we can use that clip again. It'll go right back in there. So your water seal is actually underneath the windshield, so don't worry too much about water getting in there. I don't know how much that helps. I'm sure it does a little bit because it's there, right? So we'll stick that back on, and we can even put a little bit of our polyurethane under here. So it'll be a nice seal. It'll probably be better than it was right now. Okay, so we've got our channel cleaned up. Most important is right around where the new washers, the sealing washers, are going to go on the tower. So I'm going to go ahead and lube these up. We're using our same, you know, Dynaflex Ultra non-hardening polyurethane that we put on all of the rack installs that we do, and we're just going to snug those in there. Not super tight yet, right? We're going to tighten them again at the end, but we'll get those going. And that's about how much I put on each one. There you go. Similar to the Lexuses, these 4Runners have that carrier on the inside, so you just want to take care to not push down on these as you are tightening them. Kind of alternate back and forth, but you don't want that nut carrier to go falling down inside the headliner, or it's going to create a bigger project for it. Okay, so I've got my 4 towers on, and on the front ones, or the current front ones, about to be the middle ones, I've put that height adjustment bowl at the very lowest setting. So these middle towers are going to be the pivot point, if you will. They're set at the lowest position they can be at. Make sure the rack is going to be nice and straight going across. And then we'll figure that out what the height of the back and the front are. They're basically going to rise up to wherever they need to be. On the 4th gen 4Runner, we got the back tower and the front tower, but we didn't get a middle tower. The span between those is about 60 inches. So you really want to add that middle tower to support your tents, put a tire up there, whatever you want to do. Pretty simple. We'll get into that in a second. So next step is lift the rack onto those towers, and then we'll put a couple bolts through, make sure we like where it is. So I got a little over ambitious on the rack height. Should have saw that one coming, but that's okay, that's part of this. I got a little gap here between the tower and the plate. You see that gap there? And also the rack is literally sitting on the roof in front, so that's okay, we were gentle. So what I'm gonna do is raise that tower, and I'll get the gap that I want. I'll come back to you in a second here. All right, so I got those towers reset. I got all 4 bolted up, just no lock washers, but washers, nuts. The magic number is 3, so 3rd highest, 3 out of 4. If you look across, I'm pointing in the wrong spot. you look across over there to that other tower, you should be able to see all 4 holes, and that little center bolt is going in the 3rd highest. So that's in that middle tower here on the 5th gen. So that's gonna help you out. You can see I got a little bit of clearance here. Pull my little foam out of there. Just the right gap underneath there. So now I can go ahead and position my front towers, figure out where I'm gonna put those holes. So it got quiet here for a second. I'll just give you one more look at the top of the rack. You can see where all these bolts are on the plates, how this is looking. Here's where I put the front ones. Now, these aren't attached yet, right? So my next move is I'm gonna go ahead and mark where I put those holes, but that's what that rack looks like so far, again on the 5th gen. So my trick for marking these holes, usually I'll use a Sharpie. When it's a white 4Runner, that works really well. Black 4Runner, not so good, but thankfully my punch here, it's got a pretty sharp point on it. So I can put that down through the rack, and I just need to be in the middle of one of my slots. I don't care about position necessarily. I do care about position on that tower, because I can make an adjustment later. So I'm just gonna come in here and make a little bit of a line. That's all I need to do right there. So do that for all 4, 2 here and then 2 over there. That's all we gotta do here. Here's just one more shot of the other side where you can see those little punch lines that I made. So there we go. Next move, we have to unbolt. We gotta unbolt the rack from the towers and then slide the whole thing back to give us enough room to do our drilling up here. So here we go. Okay, so I've got my rack slid back. You can see my 2 marks here. What I'm gonna do next is take this tower, position it, center it in this slot here, and center it along my marks. And then I'm gonna take my punch and I'm gonna punch a hole right in the middle of those slots there. It's tough to hold the camera, the tower, the punch, and the hammer and get the right angle, so you'll have to just bear with me, but I think you get the idea, right? Here we go. There. What that punch does, it gives me a little indent, and that's just so that when I go to drill, that drill doesn't want to walk on me, right? That drill needs to go right in the middle of that channel. That's the most important part of this whole thing. Okay, so now you can see my holes have been punched. They are ready to go. Next move then is get the drill. I like to use these little step drills. You want to use the newest, sharpest one you got. If you need to run to Harbor Freight for another one, it's worth it. Again, you just want that thing to walk. So when you drill, we're not going final depth. We're just gonna go get a hole in it to start. So you're not going for final hole diameter yet. You just want to start with a couple holes. And I've done that. I want to show you where we are. Let me flip this around here. You see these holes I've made on the 5th gen runner in front. That sheet metal has got to be 5 to 6 millimeters thick. There's a lot of meat there, okay? So what I've started doing on the 5th gens is I actually drill and tap threads. On the 4th gen, you saw me go all the way to 7/16 on the diameter and do riv nuts. But here I've got a much smaller drill. Of course, that M8 by 1.25 tap, that's the correct thread for all of these things. The idea being, it's faster and easier to tap the threads, and if I ever had an issue, I could always go and drill it out and put the riv nut in later. So that's what we're gonna do. So I'm gonna start with my tap drill, making sure I stay as plumb as I can relative to that hole so it doesn't walk at all. I want that nice small diameter there. Last caution I'll give you, you just got to be careful. You can put some stops on here if you want to make something out of a scrap piece of wood, go for it. But the idea is if that grabs, it's going to want to go into the headliner, okay? So it's just one of those where if you're not up to this, maybe you're not up to this, but just know that you got to really be able to catch that drill so it doesn't pop down, give you an extra hole in the headliner. Okay, so I got my 2 holes drilled. I blew out my chips, cleaned that up. I'll give you one more peek before we do the tapping. A little bit better idea on exactly how thick that steel is there. So again, quite a bit of meat here. Now in the middle of the rack, if we were going to go back and say we wanted to add the center towers for the 5th gen here, or again when we're doing the only center towers on a 4th gen, you don't have as much thickness of that sheet metal. It's about half. But in the front here, 2 things I want to show you. One is how thick it is. I think we've talked about that. The second is, in this front one, there's like an additional cross member down there. And it's right at the sunroof here. So we have a way to get around that. It's basically a shorter bolt. And on my tap, I've kind of got a little bottoming tap here. So I've been able to tap threads in that before I bump into that cross member. So here we go. We've got some nice clean threads now. You can see what that looks like. And I go ahead and screw that bolt in there. That feels really nice. Doesn't wiggle really at all. I mean, that's bomber tough. It feels great. So again, if you want to riv nut it, riv nut it. If you want to try tapping it, tap it. And I'll just say that again because it's important here. You want to do tap, tap it. You're a riv nut guy, do the riv nut. Again, it's your truck, you're modifying your truck. At the end, you're accountable for those results. So doing my best to share some tips, show you how I would do it, and throughout the process, I'm here to help you, but at the end of the day, you gotta own up to these results. So make your choice there. Again, I like the tapping idea on the 5th gen because I can always go bigger and go riv nut if I need to. So far, I haven't needed to. And then here's my solution for that front bolt. I've got a really short, there you go, really short M8 bolt that I put in that tower, and I've also got a stack of 3 of those oval washers in front there. See if you can see that. So that's what we do so that that'll land on top of that cross member. All right, so I've got both my front towers now attached. Threads feel great. We're almost ready to put the rack on. Before I do, I'm gonna readdress this front rubber thing. So pretty simple. Slide it up in the front, get yourself a nice clipper, and then just trim that right before that forward tower. And then once that's trimmed, it's going to take a little bit more of my Dynaflex, put a little bit up front here to replace that piece of sticky tape that we got rid of. I'll put a little bit along the inside here, not a ton, but just enough to hold it down. I'm going to go ahead and stick that back in that channel there. So that's what that looks like with the trim pieces back installed on both sides. And I went in ahead and did the segments in the middle. Again, your option if you want to go ahead and trim it out, you can put those back in, same method. You know, Land Cruisers aren't going to have that, especially the 100 series. That thing got destroyed when you ripped the factory rack off. But 4Runner, you totally have the option if you want to add those trims back in. Kind of cleans it up a little bit. And yeah, so now we're ready to shift this rack forward and bolt it up. All right, you ready? That's all it is. Okay, the rack's in position. We've got all the bolts in there, finger tight. This is where we want. We've checked the clearance up front. It's perfect. Clearance with the satellite antenna. It's right on the money. So now it's time to just snug everything up. If you haven't watched the other video, the one that says watch this one, you should check that one out because it's going to tell you a lot more, and I won't dive into it now, about just how to keep all these at the same plane, how to make it all to be one system so you don't have one attachment point being under a single point load. That's how this thing works really well. So I'm going to start by snugging this middle tower, and then I'm going to go to the back. The last one I'm going to do is that front one, because remember, it's a teeter-totter. So we want to set the plane with the back two, and then that front guy is just going to rise up and he's going to join the party there at the end. So get into that right now. Back to the 4th gen. So So once we have those rib nuts in there, then it's just put those towers on, lift the rack back onto the towers, and then tighten it all up. Same sequence as all the other racks that's in all the other videos. So pretty good. Good to go. So my sequence is this inner top bolt. I'm going to tighten it first. And as I do, that pulls that tower piece up nice and tight to the rack. Go ahead and snug that guy. Next one is going to be that outer tower to rack bolt. We're going to tighten that guy next. He's good and tight. Then I get my 6mm. And I'm going to snug those bolts that go down into the roof. And that's pulling that tower base down tight. It's going to do that final squish of that rubber sealing washer. You'll see a little bit of that black stuff maybe oozing out. That's a super positive thing. But we're tightening these middle guys last because we're going to let that thing twist. We want that tower to be able to be in its nice, happy resting spot without putting it under any kind of stress. So tighten those red guys. Oh, those are good. Maybe one more on this back one. Okay, we're going to go do the same thing in back. So again, I'm going to start by tightening this inside one first. Got a wrench on there. Crank it on in. Nice and tight. And I'm going to do that outer bolt next. Okay. Take my 6mm. I'm going to do those roof bolts. Again, give those a good snug. Everybody's nice and snug and happy. Won't make you watch it, but I'm now going to go to the other side of the rack. Same thing, middle and the back. Okay, so I've got the back towers tight on both sides. I've got the middle towers tight on both sides. And I visually have checked where these little holes are lining up. And it's kind of between the lowest and the second next highest hole on both sides, and that's perfect. So the next thing I'm going to do is tighten these two bolts that run through the middle of the tower. Make sure that that height stays locked in place. Remember that middle tower has that pin going through. So I don't have to worry about that thing because that can't move up and down, but these guys could. So now that they're in a good spot, we're happy with the gap in front. I'm going to go ahead and snug those down now. Okay, back tower's locked in. We're almost there. Back in front here, again we're going to start that inside bolt. We snug that up. See that tower goes up to its nice, happy spot. That's tight. Second upper rack to tower bolt is next. Go, 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 go. Grab our 6mm. We're going to tighten our new bolts. Good to go. Those threads feel awesome. Last thing then, we'll go ahead and snug up these center two. Now that that tower top and tower base are at that final kind of resting position. That one, and then this guy. Almost there, baby. Go do the other side. Okay, front tower is locked in, back locked in, middle almost there. Last thing we want to do now is we're going to secure those two middle bolts that go through. And then we're going to take our little 1/8 Allen, we're going to do that center bolt. We're just going to snug it up. So we're going to tighten all three bolts in the middle tower, both sides, and then we're done. And that's it. Everything's bolted up, nice and tight. Every one of these looks good. Look at that gap under the front there. It's just what we like to see. So, man, that took me 3 hours. Of course, I'm talking, maybe I could get that to 2.5, but you know, don't do this at 8 in the morning thinking you're going to go camping at 10. It does take a while, so give yourself a good half day. Take your time. Let's pull this thing out of the shop here and take a look, huh? And that's it. I hope that was fun for you. Sorry about the background noise, but you know, hey, we're at the shop and you got to get work done. So we worked through it though. But anyway, install went well. Long one there, a lot of info, but you know, let me know your questions. If you ever want help with anything, here for you, man. Tell me what else you want to see on these videos. Thanks again for being a part of this. And as always, I'll see you on the next one.